pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post that Michael Moore was just the low IQ, large print version of Noam Chomsky. Chomsky for idiots. That's not true, in my opinion. Noam Chomsky, for all his faults, is not a paranoid nor a fabricator. Noam Chomsky is interested in the clash of social and political forces and classes and so forth. Michael Moore is much more like a brown shirt looking for hidden financial conspiracies. And that's not even a vulgar form of Marxism. It's actually a great deal more like fascism, because the suggestion about hidden financial cabals is always tainted with bigotry. And it's only one step, and often not even that far, to that. In the 1950s, there was quite a widespread movement in the United States called the John Birch Society, founded by a man called Robert Welch. And Mr. Welch made himself extremely famous by saying that President Eisenhower was a dedicated and conscious agent of the international communist conspiracy. Lots and lots of people believed that. And I wondered what their lives were like. You know, you get up in Pasadena or wherever you live, Chappaqua, Arlington, you think, oh, it's another day. The President of the United States is being run by the Kremlin. I guess I've still got to go get the groceries, drop off the kids, you know. But all this raging is going on inside your skull all the time. It doesn't, in one sense, make any difference. It's probably even maybe therapeutic for some deeply disordered people. Suppose everything that was in Michael Moore's film was true, and I think I could actually say that almost nothing in it is, but suppose everything was true, what conclusion would people draw? How would it mobilize them politically? It's a form of escapism, I suppose, and a form of consolation for political defeat, and a form of denial, because if we are in a desperate struggle to save Afghanistan and have an election there and fight off and destroy the Taliban forces, the Al-Qaeda forces, not because that's what we really have to do and they forced us to take this stand, but because of a secret understanding to build a pipeline that was actually the Unocal scheme. I happen to know about it, I've known about it for a long time, was cancelled in 1998. But the discovery that the thing was cancelled in 1998 and the Al-Qaeda attack on New York is 2001 doesn't change anyone's mind who sees the film. There just must be something else they're not telling us. So that's what it's all about. It's nothing like what it seems. Well, this is preaching moral idiocy. So in one mood, I think, okay, it's harmless and I can ridicule it. And in another mood, I think it's dangerous and one must confront it very critically, because if you're spreading credulity and stupidity around the place, then you're inviting the spread of something that can be exploited by people even more unscrupulous than yourself. And there are people who are even more unscrupulous than Michael Moore. Michael Moore's film is full of lies, some of them deliberate, and distortions, but it is itself a lie and a distortion. The Unocal pipeline deal, which takes up so much of the film, the idea of building a natural gas pipeline across Afghanistan. By the way, I think Afghanistan could use a pipeline, and a lot more infrastructure too. But whether it's sad or not to say, in 1998, that deal was dumped, it was dropped. I think it was dropped around the time that Clinton rocketed the Al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan. So it's complete nonsense to say this, and it takes 1 second to check. But people sit enthralled in the dark thinking, finally I know the truth.
I cried a lot, I laughed some, and mostly I'm so angry at George Bush.
Well, then on to the next conspiracy, because Moore just heaps everything together. The other thing you have to know is that the Saudis decide everything in Washington.
For some reason, the Secret Service had shown up to ask us what we were doing standing across the street from the Saudi embassy.
I didn't realize the Secret Service guards foreign embassies. Not usually, no sir.
No. Do they give you any trouble, Saudis?
No comment on that, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take that as a yes.
You are pushing an open door with me if you say that Saudi Arabia has too much influence in the United States and that Prince Bandar has too much access to the administration. But the Bush administration has removed from power two regimes which the Saudi Arabian government wanted to keep. The Taliban regime, of which it was actually part author and patron and sponsor, and the Iraqi Ba'ath regime, which acted as a buffer in Saudi Arabia's mind against Shiaism and, of course, against democracy.
The opinions are his, but the facts are the facts.
There is a very portentously offered reading at the end of Michael Moore's dreadful film, where he says, Orwell said, George Orwell said, and then he reads something that George Orwell, in fact, did not say.
We will fight it, and we will prevail.
George Orwell once wrote that it's not a matter of whether the war is not real or if it is. Victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous.
The purport of this excerpt is to say that we now live in the world that Winston Smith lived in, where there's a pointless war being kept going for profit by people who like war for its own sake, and that there's no difference between the three superpowers in Orwell's world. They are all doing this to keep their own populations in slavery. Well, George Orwell can't be ventriloquized by me, but I'm morally certain that he would not say there was no difference between the Bush administration, or in fact, what Moore is really saying is the United States, and the Ba'ath Party, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda. But that is what you're supposed to believe if you live on Mr. Moore's howling wilderness of a planet.
Our choice wasn't between a benign status quo and the bloodshed of war. It was between war and a graver threat. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not our political opponents, and certainly not a disingenuous filmmaker who would have us believe that Saddam's Iraq was an oasis of peace, when in fact it was a place of indescribable cruelty, torture chambers, mass graves, and prisons that destroyed the lives of the small children inside their walls.
In the Weekly Standard, which is now I think the flagship political weekly of the intelligent right, I think there have been 3 reprints of the speech Mr. Clinton gave, laying out the case for the removal of the Saddam Hussein regime and saying that because of its continuous links with terrorism and encouragement of gangsterism, and because of its promiscuous attitude towards the Non-Proliferation Treaty and other matters, that it would come to a point where the United States would have to take it down. It makes the clear case that we know we've caught them trying to help bin Ladenist types. Now we've caught them cheating on weapons of mass destruction. That with this, as I say, so palpably on the record that you see pictures of Terry McAuliffe